The Olympic Games, an international celebration of human achievement, athleticism, and sportsmanship. Through the years, we've seen a wide selection of video games that have set out to encapsulate the Olympic spirit, with the Mario and Sonic crossovers primarily carrying the torch for almost a decade. However, in recent years, the Olympic Committee has opted not to renew their IP-spanning development deal with Sega and Nintendo. Instead, they've paired up with Enway, the developer responsible for this Power Rangers fighting game. Okay. And some sort of NFT game. The first red flag was that I found this game through an exclusive free uniforms deal on the Epic Game Store. You know it's trouble when they act like they're doing you a favor, even though it's a mobile game that they ported to PC. But even worse than that, it's a bad mobile game. It's a facade of the tried and tested minigame versions of Olympic sports we've seen in previous installments, and this isn't even being released alongside another, more complete game. This is it. This is what we get. I wasn't expecting a masterpiece, but any sort of personality would be nice. Even if I don't compare it to the output of other companies, Endgame themselves have proven that they are at least slightly better than this, because they also made a mobile game for the 2022 Olympics, and even a cursory glance at that shows something resembling a sense of humor, stylized graphics, and at least semi-interactive gameplay, and also unnecessary NFTs, but still, there's room to be charitable. And let me make one thing clear, I'd like to ignore this game and not care. Even as I work on this script, I'm like, do I care enough to remain frustrated for long enough to express that frustration in a video? And if you are sitting listening to me right now, I guess the answer was yes. Something about the fact that this is the official game of the 2024 Olympics makes it hit differently than other games like it. Because if we all just ignore this wet fart of a game, but they manage to get just a few people looped in who pay out, then the next time Enway farts, presumably in 2 years, it's gonna be even wetter. And after enough wet, juicy, free-to-play NFT farts, it'll be too late, and we'll all be left swimming in a river of actual poop. Like triathletes in the Paris Olympics. First, the positives. Character customization isn't the worst I've seen, and they give you the chance to change your look before every competition, which could be seen as putting emphasis on the incredible diversity of the event. A couple of the minigames are slightly more engaging than others. I mean, the breakdancing in this game is arguably on par with some of what we saw in the actual Olympics. It's cool to see models of the official buildings the competitions are being held in. And that's it. Yeah, that's it. We're done with the positives. Because the place you can see those building models is in the context of the city building part of the game. You upgrade the arenas and place additional shops and attractions around them to passively generate fans, a currency which, in true free-to-play fashion, only exists in order to create scenarios where players feel pressured to spend money. Every few hours, your facilities will fill up with fans, which you do the rounds to collect. And, of course, you need to spend fans to upgrade your facilities to hold and generate more fans, so even the act of setting up this passive income will leave you at a short-term deficit. And all of the sports minigames, the things everyone is presumably here for, are laughably simple. Each and every one of them has been done better in the past. Sure, they originally made this for phones, but come on, the complexity of the monetization scheme around these events is infinitely more fleshed out than any of the sports gameplay. And the worst part is that Phryge, the official Olympic mascot, who I assume represents a blood-soaked flag of surrender, is just so enthusiastic about every little thing.
Oh, mon chéri, you have tapped on this screen many times, and so fast even. This means you are the greatest athlete. By the way, come and look at these beautiful microtransactions, no? I pay for the first one for you because you're going to want to spend many paychecks on this amazing game.
Maybe I'm crazy, but to me it feels wrong to have the actual official Olympic mascot addressing me with the desperate enthusiasm of a coked-out timeshare salesman on his second mortgage. There's also the requisite energy bar. Competing in an event requires energy, up to 75 depending on the difficulty level, and of course at first you're bombarded with generous amounts of fans and energy, and even a drip feed of premium currency, but then, eventually, you will hit a wall. The game becomes too hard. But Jamie, you may ask, how can they make the brain-dead minigames harder? And it is a combination of things. One good way is by introducing mechanics, which they just barely do. The running minigame, where you need to tap to keep this bar over this line, adds another bar which reduces the amount of room at the top. The fencing rhythm game increases the number of inputs needed. The golf minigame seemed promising at first, with long putts and alleged wind resistance, but after hitting a shot wide and then watching it swerve and roll against the wind into the hole, I lost faith in its depth. The difficulty increase in the swimming minigame, where you tap repeatedly to fill this bar up when you launch or turn, and swipe repeatedly in the direction on the screen to fill up this bar the rest of the time, feels like it could have been expressed through adding an input, making players swipe right and then left, which would actually make it feel closer to the console version while still staying simple enough for the phone game format, But instead, the increased difficulty just makes your inputs worth less, because adding a second input to the sequence would mean expanding your game in some way, and why do that when you can just make the same repetitive tasks slightly more strenuous? Next, the performance of your AI competitors will increase, though not in a way that feels interactive. The events are distilled to a level of simplicity that feels like someone looked at each sport once and was like, oh, yeah, whatever, I get it. 3v3 basketball is a simplified version of the sport played on a half court, and where most basketball minigames are something like this, here it is represented by the devs as a series of tableaus where you take stationary shots at the basket. And at all difficulties, you're just lining up this shot line until it's green. So to make that harder, they only give you a few seconds to do that, because if you had any more, it would not be possible to miss. And then we fade to the next shot, and oh wow, the other team actually scored just enough to be ahead of you. And despite everything, I can't help but feel like there was a way to work with this, to drop any pretense of depth and produce a simple phone companion game for the Olympics. You could have even used these same minigames by using the format of Nintendo's WarioWare. Short bursts of back-to-back quick minigames which get progressively harder until you lose. You can make people watch an ad between rounds or pay for an ad-free experience, and that sounds like a winning formula to me. But no, they needed to add a bunch of garnish to project the illusion of substance so that they could justify the cash shop. Which brings us to the primary way the game gates progression at the later stages: training. See, in addition to your personal input, your athletes have a set skill level, which you can pay to upgrade by spending fans. The game gives you a warning when you try to begin a higher level event, and you may think this just means it will be more difficult. But eventually you may find that even if you perform really well, your underleveled athlete's best performance is not enough to surpass what the scoreboard tells you was the performance of the AI you're put up against, or, well, that seems to be the developer's intention, but not in skeet shooting. You see, the skeet shooting minigame is actually too simple. You get 6 shots with which to click or tap on 6 targets, 2 at a time, and I got gold in every single tier of this minigame without leveling up my athlete even once, which either means that they couldn't find a way to artificially increase the difficulty, or I was playing as that chill Turkish uncle guy. And the disparity between your athlete and the opponents isn't even consistent. I ran the same difficulty of race 3 times in a row while underleveled and placed 4th and 6th with almost no mistakes, but then placed 3rd in a run where I totally messed up. Though if you watch that one back, I actually did drop to 4th at the last second, but it didn't count for some reason. Another odd detail, there are a variety of uniforms you can wear, but they only unlock for each event when you level your athlete up. When you would think this would be more of an independent purchase type deal, because by the time I hit a higher level and got to wear that outfit, I was probably nearly done with the event. At first, athlete skill ups are inexpensive to the point of being frictionless, easily obtainable through upgrading and collecting from the city, but around levels 6 or 7, the number of fans required jumps from in the ballpark for a casual player to hundreds of thousands of fans for a single level on an athlete in a single event. And you don't need to level up just once, either. If you're level 6 and the next event isn't winnable until you are level 8, that's going to be over 1 million fans. And if we check the shop, it seems like they have it set to value fans in a way that scales to match what a player would consider to be a lot based on their current income. I had to go back and check my footage because I thought I was going crazy, but when I first started playing, the rate was 2.5 million fans for the premium currency equivalent of $100, and by the time I finished getting footage, I could get 3.7 million for 10. There's also an online leaderboard pitting the scores of real players of different nations against one another, and try not to be shocked, but your placement on that leaderboard isn't really determined by your level of skill. I mean, how could it be? Instead, the score is cumulatively based on the number of times a person has gotten a medal in an event, with an additional multiplier based on how much they have upgraded their arena, because as everyone knows, a nicer arena makes your victory worth more. So if, for some reason, you want to rank on that leaderboard, waiting around for passive fans and energy probably isn't going to cut it. Mathematically, there's just no way to get enough to spam these insanely easy games over and over and place on the leaderboard without spending substantially more money than this game should ever dream of being worth, and that number starts at like $5 for me, but clearly they would gladly take a whole lot more. And on top of all that, the Paris Olympics are over already, which means that any hype or curiosity downloads will be dying down quickly, and with how absolutely soulless these minigames are, I don't see there being any long-term value or chance of user retention. Meanwhile, 12 years later, people are still going back to play the 2012 London game, or the Mario and Sonic ones, because those are actual games. There's no sympathetic spin I can put on this. This is not a real game. This is a trap, designed from its core to be abusive and manipulative, endorsed and licensed by the apparently comically greedy Olympic Committee, and pushed to the target audience of the Olympic Games, which is, like, everyone on Earth. And I think that's gross. Like the water in the Seine. But until next time, I'm Jamie. Thanks for watching Standard Gaming.